Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special installment of Club Moffat Talks. I am your exhausted and put upon host, digital services librarian, Christy Panetta.
And I'm Joseph McNeely, and I'm an instruction librarian, or the instruction librarian.
I'm Ryan Samuelson, and I am an associate university librarian. And you made it sound like we're going to have we're going to talk about drug use or child endangerment or something like that on this episode.
Wait, we're not?
Maybe a
I
little.
have my notes, my reams upon reams of notes that I took from this one. No, today we're excited to talk about this one because today, as far as I know, is our 50th episode.
Yes.
Big 50, halfway to 100. Pretty significant for us. I did not think that we would ever get this far, so
I
thank
didn't
you for
either.
everyone
No.
for sticking with us. Um, so yeah, we thought we'd do something a little special today and just kind of have a relaxed episode. But before we get into all that, do you two have anything you'd like to own up to, as in what have you been doing lately?
I reread The Long Walk, saying that the movie's coming out this summer.
Mhm.
That's the Stephen King novel.
It's his first novel. It's a novel he wrote when he was in college. It was his first novel. He didn't publish it for about 10 years because he didn't think it was very good. I personally think it's his strongest novel. It's his most philosophical novel. And again, no one really knows what the impetus was for him to make it. I think it was the fact that he had so many of his classmates volunteering to go to Vietnam. I think it was the impetus for the novel. And I think it shows in the trailer. At least the director seems to be leaning heavily on the Vietnam analog or allegory for the story. But there's a lot more to it than that. Again, it's a very, like I said, it's his most philosophical work out of all the works he's done.
I didn't realize until earlier today that this year was the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, actually.
Yeah, that was a thing that I saw.
Yeah, I was very surprised by that one, but yeah, topical.
Yeah. Athena and I are reading the book version of like the original book story, The Last Unicorn. And,
Beagle, right?
huh?
Beagle is the name of
Beagle,
the author.
yes. Beagle is the author. And so far, we've been impressed by how closely the animated movie followed the book. But
Rankin
we're,
Bass, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, we're doing that. And we just watched the animated Predator movie
Oh,
What was that?
online.
I've heard good things about that.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And we just watched Accountant 2, which was also pretty good. Um, it's one of those things where it's like, you got to know what you're going in for, because it's an action movie, but it's a good one. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, I have two things actually to respond to you with. The first, actually, it's not really a response, but did you hear that Amazon canceled the Wheel of Time?
Yeah.
Yes.
The third season is when people were finally saying that it was taking off and was doing really well, and then they just said it cost too much and not enough people are talking about it. But like third season's when you start getting back on track with the books.
Yeah, but isn't that typical
Now
of
people are
Amazon? Don't
liking
they
it,
usually do like
and
two or three seasons and then even if the series is doing quite well, they cancel it because the algorithm says that they don't do well after like the people don't turn in they don't get any new viewers after the third season.
I just I have to know what the deal was with that because like how are you going to like voluntarily say you're going to adapt a 13 book long series and then it doesn't turn out well in three seasons and then you drop it? Like, did no one say, okay, this might not pick up for another like four or like until like season four or five, and we're gonna have to build up to it, and then they get to that point and they just stop? Like, what were they expecting?
Usually when these things happen in the field of entertainment, it's because there's a new executive in charge of that particular department. And for him to look good, he has to make all of the old shows look bad.
Mm.
The people talk about this all the time with like network television. I can only assume the same is true for streaming. Basically, they basically cut the old stuff because that way they can say, "Oh, I'm cutting the chaff. I'm making these great changes," and it, I don't know.
That's silly. It's a silly little happenstance. I can't remember the other thing I was going to say, Joe. So I'm just going to drop it before I start stammering for things. Like
Okay.
I said, my kids beat me up this weekend, so I'm not thinking.
Yeah. Well, that should make for an exciting.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great. Um, I don't really have a lot to talk about. My wife and I are watching Succession on HBO. We're in the last season. It's fine. People started really talking about it during the last season, and I'm like just watching it like, yeah, this is all right. This is okay. I finished playing a new video game called Clair Obscur.
Mhm.
It's a French developed game. I think that might be the best video game I played in the last 10 years. It's stellar, it's heartbreaking, very good. The soundtrack is they found the composer on his SoundCloud, and then he pumped out this music. People like that have all that's already seen tens of millions of views on YouTube.
Mhm.
Um, in particular, I'm going to say the name of one track. It's the one everyone's talking about. Um, it's called uh, Un Vie Atame. It's a French name.
Mhm.
It is probably the best song I've ever heard in a video game ever. Um, I'm astounded by it. I can't believe this thing came out and is perfect the way it is. So, anyone interested in role-playing games, sad video games, that kind of thing, you owe it to yourself. It's very good. Other than that, though, I haven't really had a whole lot of time to do much to treat myself, as they would say. Um, so, if no one else has anything to say, anything to talk about, I suppose. Oh, I've been reading The Hobbit to my daughter
Oh, huh?
before bed. Um, she's actually really enthralled by it. She's actually had some nights where she's fallen asleep to me reading it, and that was the absolutely what I was hoping for once. Um, we just finished reading Riddles in the Dark,
Mhm.
the Gollum chapter,
Mhm.
and she was. I did my best to read Gollum. I'll just say that. Whenever I had him saying scary or threatening things, she has a big Minnie Mouse plushie that's like this big.
Mhm.
It's really huge. Whenever I would do the scary moment, she would hug it up real tight. Um, Whenever I would have him say goofy Gollum things, she would laugh. Just start laughing up a storm. And now I don't want to read the rest of The Hobbit because that's the best part.
I take it
Up until you get to Smog and you get to do the dragon voice, but then like that's like 200 pages before
I
that.
take it you're doing the reprint, not the original.
Yeah, it's the one where Bilbo picks up the ring and Tolkien goes, just by the way, so you know, this is a really important ring, and then
Yeah, okay.
Gollum gets extraordinarily mad at him for stealing it. The original, I don't think I've ever read the original print, but
I think Project Gutenberg might have it.
of
I'm
course,
not
yeah, I'm
sure.
sure, I'm sure it's floating
Well, it
around.
depends whether or not it's in print or not. 37, it may be. I
It's
don't
early.
remember.
It was like right. It was either right before or right after Fellowship was published. He came back and like heavily revised The Hobbit.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he didn't try to write Fellowship around the differences, and he didn't try to like just say The Hobbit is a different work or whatever. Yeah, he actively turned around and like completely rewrote chunks of The Hobbit because it didn't line up at all with any of the Lord of the Rings books. So These days, yeah, I don't think anyone really circulates the original Hobbit anymore. It's not like it's a valueless book, but I think at this point, if you're reading it, then you're reading it because it's part of Lord of the Rings and not just because it's a cute little book about a Hobbit guy going on an adventure. Which is a shame because it's a really fun kids book. But no, I'm not. We're reading the
Yeah,
standard version.
I assume so because I think it is hard to get a hold of the original copy.
Yeah, that would be cool though. I'd like to have a copy of that one. I do know my dad gave me a copy of his four-book set of Lord of the Rings from like the late 70s or early 80s. I
That's
can't
going to
really
have the
remember.
changes in it because
They're
it's
obliterated by smoking damage and just being read too much. Just there's an obvious difference in the use of the books from Fellowship, which is literally falling apart, to Return of the King, which looks immaculate. Outside of the fact that the pages are pure gross yellow. Um, but
well.
even
Also,
that
that just happens over time. That's not necessarily smoking. It's. I have a set from the 80s that I had to replace because basically the wood pulp they make the pages out of just turns yellow and turns brittle after a while. That has
yeah,
nothing
but
to do
they
with
still smell
smoking.
like
That's just
cigarette
that's
smoke,
just
though.
that's just the fact that the pages are of poor quality.
Um, but yeah, no, that one, even that version of The Hobbit from that set, even that one is well after they issued the corrections. So yeah. All right. So I think that just about wraps up our early parts. We surprisingly none of us are really doing anything lately. It's summer. It's a weird time. It's always weird during the summer. But this being our 50th episode, Joe, you came to the was it you or actually no, I'm starting to think one of you two. I had nothing to do with this. One of you two, Ryan, thank you. I started as soon as I said Joe, I was like, wait a second, it wasn't Joe, it was Ryan. But I wanted to make sure. Ryan had the idea to talk about anniversaries. Specifically, we're thinking of 50th anniversaries. This being the 50th episode.
Silver Jubilee.
The sil is that what it's called?
I believe so.
Ah,
I believe the 100th is the Golden Jubilee, I think.
okay, that makes sense. 50
Well, let
years
me
is
check. I'm a librarian. I can look these things up.
50 years is still very significant. 50 episodes for something. I mean, it's halfway to 100 already. But it's more than 25. I mean, it's more than 30 or 40. It's a solid number there. You're starting to really see something kind of come into its own when it starts to hit the 50 point.
Oh, no, I am completely wrong. 50 is the golden, 25 is the silver.
Oh, so we're all right.
Yeah, Joe
So
knew that. He wasn't
100
going to say anything.
100 will be the platinum jubilee then.
So it's our Golden Jubilee.
Yeah.
Um,
I knew you were going to look it up.
yeah,
So,
that's fine. Yeah, just say something wrong and then wait until Ryan corrects us. It's fine. Um, But what we really kind of were thinking about, being a library, being a place that has a bunch of things in it, things that are very old, we were starting to think like, what are some notable 50th anniversaries coming up or have just already come up? And the thing that I started coming to, I think I'm not going to actually be able to speak a whole lot about this, because I'm a millennial and all the things I like are new. And I have no cultural touchstones for anything. But when in looking at some of the lists, like kind of going through like, what's turning 50 this year? It really made me think like there's honestly almost no point in trying to absorb everything from like a specific author or a specific time period, a specific genre of art, because there's too much. Even if the only things that you touch on are going to be the significant ones, there's still a lot that you're leaving behind. The fact that we're able to look at these and say, like, this is the anniversary of this thing that exists, even if the thing that we're really looking at is just the fact that it's an anniversary, it still allows us to keep the idea or the status of that item kind of existing in perpetuity. It might not be something that anyone has any interest in ever going back to, but someone might. Someone may have an interest or a need to know that these things exist. There might be a piece of research that you're doing that no one's ever talked about before, but it might be coming back up because it's the 50th anniversary of its publication. And just remembering it might impact your life in some way. So the stuff I talk about today is going to just be because I care about it in particular. But if there's something that you like that is turning 50 this year, or that you might not know about that you just discovered because of its age and because it was like it's specifically that you discovered it because it turned 50 or whatever it is, you should let us know. These are things that we really are interested in, especially as information professionals. It's kind of our bread and butter, is just to know things that exist. So why don't one of you take it away? I kind of gave the big introduction, so whatever. Especially Ryan, you're the one who came up
One
with
of the
the idea.
things,
So this is your.
well, I'll start off with books because, again, we are librarians. One of the things that really struck me about 1975 is how many books have been adapted from 75. There's tons and tons of books that came out in the 75 that have been adapted over the years. Shogun, Salem's Lot, Terms of Endearment, Looking for Mr. Goodbar, The Great Train Robbery, Tuck Everlasting, Silence of the Lambs, The Eagle Has Landed. Those are all books that have been relatively popular and have been adapted in the Black Sunday, also by Thomas Harris. Those are all books that have had movies or TV miniseries or a series of various sorts that have been done based on those characters. And that's just kind of interesting. I'm just wondering if, well, I take that back. There still are a lot of books that are being adapted nowadays, but it doesn't seem like books are being adapted as much as they were from the 70s. Maybe that's the point that seems to be, because that's just one year in the 70s. Those are all the great bestsellers of that year, and they are all adapted. All of the bestsellers were adapted to books of various movies or television of various sorts. I just find that interesting that
Well, and
again, stuff is still being adapted today, but it doesn't seem like as percentage-wise, maybe it doesn't seem like as much, maybe.
well, I mean, you just talked about The Long Walk. That's getting a new adaptation
The first
here soon, and
adaptation, actually, aside from some student films that have been done over the years, it's the first adaptation of it.
and just recently, one book that's celebrating its 50th anniversary somehow is Salem's Lot. We talked about that before in our podcast a little while ago, but that's one of Stephen King's first novels. That's getting that just got a new adaptation. It was a very um, kind of embattled film adaptation, actually. I think quite a few people were unhappy about it, but the fact remains that it's like that's something that just recently got an adaptation. Tuck Everlasting, I'm pretty sure, got a movie a few years back.
Well, you missed the big one, Shogun.
Yeah.
Shogun. Oh, sorry. That one I
Mhm.
forgot about. I was going to mention that before, then I just completely dropped off of it. Shogun is like, people are seriously debating if that's not like the greatest like short run TV show ever made. It got us. It got announced for a sequel, and I was sure they were going to go into the next James Clavell book, because the first season of Shogun covers that first book perfectly. From what I understand, it's like page to page, beginning to end, everything about that book is covered like slavishly faithful to the
Well,
original.
I wouldn't say slavishly faithful because what I've read is, and I've seen some of it. I've never read the novel. A friend of mine has. He loves the novel. One of the things they do is they corrected Cavill because he
Oh,
wasn't
yeah,
an expert
sure.
in Japanese society or Japanese culture. So one of the things they had the opportunity to do with the miniseries is to correct him when he did things incorrectly or wrong.
Oh, sure. So in that case, yeah, it's more than slavishly faithful, because it's faithful to the culture which it was based on. One that Clavel might have had an interest in, but he was not a part of that society at that point. I don't know anything about James Clavell, but obviously a man named James Clavell was not a Japanese man, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the one of the showrunners and also main actor, is it Hiroyuki Sanada? Um, is that his name? I believe.
The guy that played the major character.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's his name. Main character guy, outside of weird face looking guy whose name sounds like a cartoon. I can't remember his name, but uh, yeah, no, they have a perfectly good explanation and reasoning behind correcting some of those mistakes, and it's not some that obviously Clavel made like harmfully wrong. It's just stuff that he didn't know about for whatever reason. But yeah, that just released, and it's seeing its 50th anniversary for the novel now. It's not the first novel in the series, but that one in particular that's the famous one.
And that seems to be a theme nowadays. A lot of times we talk about adaptations, I think in our previous one, and I mentioned this as well, the idea of improving upon the adaptation, taking something and making it better, because in hindsight, the writer can see, oh, these are mistakes I made, or the new screenwriter in the case of uh, uh, Clavel would basically go back and say, "Oh, these were mistakes that made. We can improve upon that." And again, like we said, we talked about with I think it was last month we talked about the adaptations. I really like those type of adaptations where they manage to improve upon or correct things or streamline, or they look back at something and say, "This was a little disjuncted. Let's try moving stuff around in the timeline or something like that to make it flow a little bit better."
Or remaking something that was bad to begin with. That's a thing that I really
Oh yeah, I really like. Well, again, I'm also mentioned that about really bad books which became great movies,
oh yeah.
such as 1975 50th anniversary of both Jaws the book and Jaws the movie.
Mhm.
One's very, very, very good. One is not so good.
Kind of schlocky.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're talking. I was mentioning this with my wife, where we were talking about like I was going through that list, and I was like, it's the 30th anniversary of Clueless this year, and she was like she just looked defeated. She was like, yeah, I know. But we started to think about how it almost seems like the kind of things that we're looking at now. Maybe it's just rose-tinted glasses, maybe, or like nostalgia goggles or something like that. But it seems like a lot of the stuff that we're celebrating now, like having their 25th anniversary or having their 50th anniversary, is of lesser quality than the same like level of stuff. For example, we were looking at what's going to be 25 this year compared to something that was turning 25 when we were born, like when I was born. And age discrepancy is whatever, but I was like, can you imagine now telling our kids about like, yeah, when we were born, it was like this whatever anniversary of like Breakfast at Tiffany's or The Shining or one of these other great movies from the 60s and 70s. And now it's like today's the 25th anniversary of Final Destination. We can look at the like it's been so many decades since the film about high society and Hollywood and all these things, and also like Great Gatsby is also an example of that. But Breakfast at Tiffany's itself, like it has something to say. And on the other hand, it's been 25 years since the movie about the the tanning bed killed that woman.
I
I don't
gotcha.
know. Obviously, there are better things that came out at that point, but it just seems like it's not quite as good these days.
What scares me is when I realize that, for example, 19 so well, let me actually do 1985 because 1985 is a much more stronger year in my mind because I was 14, 15 years old. It freaks me the heck out to realize that 1945 is as far away from 1985 as 1985 is from today. That just freaks me the heck out when I think about that sort of thing. So yeah,
That's the
I get
thing
what
that
you're saying. I get
really,
what you're saying.
yeah. So what would it be like 75?
25 would be, yeah. I
would be
mean,
the 20s. Like it would be like almost the Great Depression since
and I think that has
1929.
to do with the fact
The
of
same
how
distance.
big a change the United States went throughout the 20th century. Because I look back at 1985 1975, 1985, and I go, okay, things were a little bit different when it comes to things like computers and data and stuff like that. But for the most part, you can watch the films, you understand things for the most part. It's not, the society does not seem that different. 1925 seems like just a completely
It,
different culture, different
it's like a
world.
different world almost.
Yeah.
Like everything's changed since then. One of the other things that's really weird about going from 75 to 2025, also compared from 25 to 75, is that what I was looking at, I was thinking, like what are some of the things that I like? Obviously, I like manga, I like anime, I like video games, that kind of stuff. There's nothing. When you go back and see like what are the 50th anniversaries of things in this field,
Yeah.
it's like it's empty. And it's not like anime just or manga in particular just popped out of existence, right? Like you have stuff like Astro Boy and even things before that that are, from the 40s. They're
Hmm.
older. Osamu Tezuka was making things like right on the right following World War II. It's not like it was just something that came out of the ether. But looking at what came out in 75 is like it's barren almost. You have like um Gona guy and I can never remember his name, but like stuff like Grindizer and Mazinger and Ghetto Robo. Ghetto Robo is something I really like, but it's still like there are a few like mecha things floating around from manga at this time. There was an adaptation of The Dog of Flanders, I think, that was relatively, I guess, well known. But other than that, it's like yeah, like I said, it's like nothing at all. And there's a 50th
Well,
anniversary for all these things, but it's completely drowned out by the fact that nothing else really existed. Or like video games in particular, when you look at that, it's like Pong had just come out, I guess. Like it's not like arcades also like anime. It's not like they just popped into existence one day. But compared to what was big and what not even just big, compared to what existed then to now, it's really hard to find anything to celebrate from that time period because it was such a different landscape in general.
well, I think you're seeing a case where basically, I think a good comparison would be like the silent film era here in the United States. Is that the films do exist, but there's nothing that really. I mean, there's a few like Ben-Hur and some of the monster horror ones and stuff that really stand out, but nothing really grabbed the imagination until the golden age of cinema, which I would say like the 30s and 40s, basically.
Yeah. Like Citizen
Basically,
Kane happened, and
yeah.
that's modern film.
And then so I think the same thing happened with manga and anime especially. I don't think that really blossomed until the late 80s, early 90s for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, you have stuff like Gundam, obviously,
You
like
do.
stuff
There's
from
stuff out there. I
79,
mean,
which
Gatchaman was a huge one for me when I was a kid. Uh, Speed Racer, Battle of the Planets, and stuff like that. But still, compared to what came afterwards, compared to again the stuff that was coming out in the late 80s, early 90s, there's no comparison.
oh yeah, and I think there like the thing that really like starts that up is Fist of the North Star. Because before that, it's kind of like it's the stuff you mentioned. It's Speed Racer, it's the episodic stuff like Battle of the Planets. I can't remember what that was called before. Might have been
Gatchaman.
Gatchaman. Yeah, stuff like that, where it's like superhero stuff. It's kind of Western, and even a lot of the stuff from, like I said, Osamu Tezuka, uh, highly influenced by Disney and older Disney products. But it's not until you get like the really gritty, like almost adult-oriented stuff for children that's not episodic at all, that follows a plot line, specifically with Fist of the North Star. That's when you start getting people who are like, oh, manga and anime can be its own radically different thing. And it has the same Western influences, but like instead of turning in to see with that one in particular, who is Kenshiro going to beat the crap out of today? It's Kenshiro's on a rescue mission, and been going on for several episodes, and it will continue for a few episodes from there. Um, Obviously, even like a lot of TV shows, like in America, didn't follow that kind of formula until much later. Like something
Yeah.
like Twin Peaks is when our TV stopped being that episodic and that kind of like focused on just whatever happens that week.
Babylon 5 would be the genre based series that did the same sort of
Oh
formula.
yeah, sure, yeah, of course.
And then it transferred over into mainstream. We started getting stuff like Lost, suddenly,
Yeah.
where it's suddenly building on itself instead of
In
episodic.
2000 and what, 4, 2005, like it took a long time for like the idea that people want to turn into a story for a very long time before that was accepted.
And we're interesting now that we're getting some pushback on that by people saying, "Oh, I'd rather have the episodic type storyline rather than something where if I miss an episode, I'm completely lost to what's going on."
Yeah. Plus those kind of filler episodes are also designed for character development.
Yeah.
Like they'll be one-off episodes, but they still help like develop some of the characters that may not have that much interaction with the main cast or something. So there are reasons behind it, but it's like we're finding a new ways of really interacting with TV now, and I think the binge method might have set us back a few years, to truth be told.
Well, going off of what we're talking about and to bring us back to the what we were talking about again, how do you think this podcast has changed in the last 50 episodes?
Joe put us on track. Um, that's the one entire difference that I think kept us going this far was that we recruited Joe and he actually has a consistent voice and an intent with this podcast that we didn't have at all before.
I agree. And the fact that he made sure that he said, you guys need to have our faces on. It's not going to be that hard to record a video. We need to have our faces available. And he also did something, the very simple thing, like we're going to spend the beginning of it getting the whole small talk out of the way. And then we're going to go into the actual episode where we're going to talk about something in depth. And then at the end, we're going to talk about stuff in our community. I mean, he's the one who set up the template for how we do our shows. So we
Absolutely.
appreciate you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, Talking about anniversaries, and because you were just talking about TV series, I was looking at TV that started in 1975, some of which are still on the air.
Yeah, the big one is right at the top of your list that you gave to us.
Yeah, Saturday Night Live, also Wheel of Fortune,
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
and Good
yeah.
Morning America.
Yeah.
75, I believe, was also the premiere of the Kool-Aid Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But other TV shows from 75 include Faulty Towers, Wonder Woman, The Jeffersons, One Day at a Time, Welcome Back, Kotter, Space 1999, Starsky and Hutch, and The Donnie and Marie Show. And I
It
mean,
says something about the lack of channels back in 1975 that I remember watching the pilot for Wonder Woman, The Jeffersons, One Day at a Time, and Welcome Back, Carter. I saw all
yep.
of the first episodes of those
I
as they were broadcast.
Yeah, I absolutely saw those first episodes when they were first broadcast.
Oddly
And
enough, the one that really registered with me was One Day at a Time for some reason. I can't
I
explain.
watched that one because I was a fan of one of the daughters,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, you know. But the Faulty Towers, I guess maybe because it's British, I don't think I saw until much later.
Oh yeah, well, it wasn't broadcast here unless you had a PBS station that was showing it, basically.
And I don't know why, but I never saw Space 1999.
Oh, I found Space 1989 in the 80s
Mhm.
on something like one of the cable networks, and I fell in love with it. It's a very odd show because what happened is The first season was very much British science fiction.
Hmm.
And when that didn't get the numbers they wanted, they basically hired the writing staff from Star Trek to come on and make it American science fiction. So there's a big disconnect between the first season and the second season as far
Hmm.
as the plot ideas and the storylines and stuff like that. And even the cast.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, it's not just TV either. There's a huge amount of really great movies from 75 in particular too that we're seeing
Yeah.
their 50th anniversaries. And Ryan's already talked about one actually. Um, one of the best one of the best horror movies ever made, Jaws.
Yeah.
Um, it's still one of the like it's that's that movie feels timeless almost. Um,
Well, and I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
no, I was gonna list them all off. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say some stuff too. It's like I actually thought that you'd talk about Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
That was coming up, yeah. I saw Holy Grail in high school, or maybe late middle school, maybe early high school. I was around 13 when I saw that movie for the first time, and it's really amazing how I don't quote that movie anymore, really. I don't really think in those kind of humor terms, I think.
Hmm.
But the way that movie shaped me is like unavoidable. Like I think there's that part of that movie's in my DNA now, even though it's not like I like the meaning of life more. I think that movie is a lot more ironically meaningful, and I think the humor is a little more well, it's a lot darker, but I think it just fits like my sense of humor better. But that movie's also like it's so timeless and it's so perfect. Like it I believe they had like really bad um issues filming it, right? Like they had a really horrible filming cycle with that one.
Basically, they had no budget. They were filming in the middle of the Scottish moors. Um, Cast members said the biggest thing they wanted to do was they basically would knock each other over to rush back to the small little town that they had hotel rooms in because the hot water would run out after the
Oh,
first person taking the shower. Um, I forget who it was, but one of the members eventually just he actually went out and got a hotel room in a much larger city and got a driver to drive him out to set every day on his own budget, on his own, out of his own money, basically, because he couldn't put up with the accommodations they had.
God, what a nightmare. But
Hmm.
it seems effortless. Like it's not even that long of a movie. It's just like it's so easy to watch. It's yeah, that doesn't seem like a 50-year-old movie at that point. And that's what's so weird about the movies on this list where you look at them and they're like that doesn't feel like a 50-year-old product right now.
Well, again, and we can talk about this a little bit about film history. There's a huge shift between 1965 and 1975 as far as personnel, as far as the big directors, as far as the way movies are made. Basically, the studio film of the 60s was dying, and basically in 75 you begin to get people like De Palma and Spielberg and Lucas and um, the two big gangster guys, Apocalypse Now and
Oh,
Goodfellas.
Coppola.
Those are huh?
Coppola.
Scorsese
Scorsese
and
Coppola.
what?
Coppola.
Coppola is who I'm thinking of. Yes. They were a group known as the Brat Pack because they were all directors who had gone to film school. First batch of students at a film school that were suddenly becoming directors, and they basically redid the way movies were done to make them more realistic, to make them more modern, I guess is the way to describe it. And the techniques and the way films are done today are basically the same exact way that they did it. There's
Yeah.
a huge gap between the very campy, almost templated way movies were done from the 60s as compared to the 70s. In fact, a lot of times people talk about how foreign films are campy or done in a certain style, like the Bollywood films or some of the Japanese films or some of the European films. That's how all American films used to be at one time, and it's because these new directors who were influenced a lot by, I think, Italian directors and some of the Japanese directors, such as Akira Kurosawa, they would come in and they did a completely new way of doing films that still resonates today. And I think that's one of the reasons why is because, again, before then, films were, again, much more campy, much more artificial. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, but I mean, Scorsese was a protege of Kurosawa.
Yeah.
Like you see this now at this point in history, in film history, is when you see the directors who are either inspired by or taught by those directors who were in their own way shaping film in a unique method that was away from that template. This is when you start seeing them really jump out into the scene and become their own kind of like visionary directors. And that's what we have now. That's like the only thing we have now is you're either a studio director for Marvel or you're making personal small scale movies for A24. And there's not a like
Well, there is, but those are all short run miniseries on streaming services.
or they're on Netflix or something, right? Like even now you have like people like Mike Flanagan who make stuff like Midnight Mass, who like I think he cut his teeth on smaller scale movies at one point too, but he's someone who's now like a voice, I think, like someone who's very much from this kind of same era, or cut from the same cloth even. Some of the other movies that are seeing 50th anniversaries now, A Boy and His Dog,
Mhm.
um, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Have either of you've both, I
Well, I've seen
assume,
everything
have
on the
gone to.
list. Everything you
Yeah.
listed that you have listed here, I've seen. And I
Well, have
love
you gone
most
to
of the
see
things.
Rocky Horror like in one of the big like show events?
Yeah, I've seen it 3 times, I think, in the big
Uh,
show event type stuff. Yeah,
I've only gone
in
once,
high
and it
school.
wasn't a big one. It was really small scale, and I'm um kind of annoyed about that because I really wanted to see a big one.
I
Uh,
was friends with a whole bunch of theater kids and was trying to
oh, so you
date
had to,
one of
you were
them.
dragged
So
along
yeah,
for
I've seen Rocky Horror. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
It's
it.
it's a rite of passage if you're a theater kid in high school, at least in
Yeah,
the
of
80s.
course.
You had to go see the midnight showings of Rocky Horror.
Here's one that is like I look at this and I'm like, that doesn't seem like a 50-year-old movie either. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's like that movie looks modern. It's brilliant. I love that movie. I love the book too. I actually got to listen to an audiobook that was narrated by John C. Riley. That it completely like gave me a reinterpretation of that story, and it's like and just having Jack Nicholson be in that role and how sympathetic they end up making that character is just really just stellar.
Well,
Again, that's one of
just
these that I'm
looking
like,
at this, I realize how different these films are. Again,
yeah.
films just a decade earlier. You have 2 spy films on the list, 3 Days of the Condor and The Eiger Sanction. Much more gritty, much more realistic, much less good guy, bad guy type of films than have been done before. You've got 2 westerns on here, Rooster Cogburn and Bite the Bullet. Again, very gritty, very realistic, very um, raw, I'd say, is one of the traits I'd say.
Well, you mentioned one earlier. We're only 4 years out from the 50th anniversary of Apocalypse Now. And I rewatched it for the first time in a while, and my wife watched it for the first time with me recently. I'm surprised she hadn't seen it before, but just going through it, that it's striking how modern that movie looks. It does
Have
not look like a 1975 film at
Have you
all.
seen the documentary on the making
No,
of
I
it?
haven't watched
Oh,
that.
it's really good. It
Yeah.
goes good. You'd love
I'm
it.
intending to.
Okay. Look, Ryan, do you remember seeing any of these things when they came out? Did you see any of the Disney ones, like The Escape to
I
Witch
was
Mountain?
4 years old in 1975. The only one on the list that I saw was probably a year later on the worldwide. I mean the world of Disney, which was probably the Apple Dumpling Gang.
Yeah, yeah. The Escape to Witch Mountain, The Apple Dumpling Gang, I would have
Same,
seen.
yeah. Escape from Witch Mountain, same thing. Yeah.
Uh, Rooster Cogburn, I probably saw in 75 because my family were huge Wayne fans.
Hmm.
Um, Jaws, I know I saw that year because my dad took me to it for as a birthday present.
Escape to Witch Mountain is the first one on the list I probably saw, and I probably saw it, like I said, on the Sunday night. I forget what the show was called. It was the Wonderful World of Disney. Was
Yeah.
was the show.
Yeah.
Probably the same thing with the Apple Dumpling Gang. I may have seen the Apple Dumpling Gang in the theater, but I don't think so. I think I saw the sequel to the Apple Dumpling Gang in the theater.
I think that there's several things on the list that count as like cult classics. Obviously,
I
Holy
noticed you didn't have
Grail.
Rollerball. You put in Death Race 2000, but you didn't put in Rollerball.
I did put in Death Race 2000, and I did not put in Rollerball. And the reason I didn't is because I made the list and I don't like Rollerball.
I would say the Rollerball is probably more influential than Death Race 2000 personally, but okay.
Well, I don't know. Well, not on me personally. I mean, Death Race 2000, arguably Sylvester Stallone's best role. Introduced me to Mary Woronov, who I still think
Yeah,
is
I got you. Yeah,
amazing.
I got you.
And the whole hand grenade. I mean, just a masterpiece. And of course, it has now spawned 1 to 2 million spinoffs.
Well, if you're going to include something like Death Race 2000, then I'm going to include Super Inframan, the Shaw Brothers attempt to do an Ultraman ripoff,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah.
Well, there's
I
a
mean,
medium that we don't really talk about at all, really, in this podcast, and I think it's probably just because none of us are really that interested. But I want to mention 1975 in music.
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
Because I looked at this list, I was like, what was going on in the musical world at the time? And I looked at this list and I was like, whoa, like what in the world was this like? If you were into music in 75, like what was this year like? Like this was insane. You can go down the list of like new albums that released in 75 and it's like back to back. It's like week to week almost. Like the year starts with an Elvis album, like John Lennon's final solo album released this year. It's like it's all the way down. Like it's just constant back to back until the end of the year.
Mhm.
There are a few, maybe there's like 8 albums that I picked out here. Like 8 that I recognize them and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll mention those, whatever. But these are all 5 decades old now, and they all came out in 75. They're all celebrating their 50th anniversary, and it's amazing to me. Um, the self-titled ABBA album
Uh,
came out in 75. Fandango by ZZ Top.
yeah.
Journey's self-titled album
Mhm.
released this year. The debut studio album by Journey, for that matter. Hair of the Dog by Nazareth. I didn't know Love Hurts was a cover.
Uh,
Right? Like I went through this and I was like, oh my God, that came out this year. And I looked at that. It said the Everly Brothers cover, and I was like, that's a cover? Like, that's not a rock ballad, really? Um, this one, I'm sure my mom probably doesn't even know about this, and she should. I should tell her this, because she would love to hear it. The Redheaded Stranger by Willie Nelson.
yeah.
That came
Blue Eyes
out.
Crying in the Rain.
What is it?
Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain is
Blue
on
Eyes
there.
Crying in the Rain. There we go. Yeah, that's the top single from that one. Um, I mean, God, this one, if my wife doesn't know about this, she should. But again, these were like someone I know. If I don't particularly have a connection to one of these albums, I know someone who probably does.
Yeah.
Um, the self-titled Fleetwood Mac album,
Yes.
the
So
one with
important. So many great songs on that one.
Rhiannon says
Monday
Landslide.
Morning, Over My Head, Landslide.
Like good Lord, what a year. Like the year Landslide came out, right? And it's like
Right.
in the middle of everything. July, literally July, in the middle of the year, this album comes out.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite albums ever, Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Like that
Yeah.
doesn't, again, these are some of the things like the art where I'm looking at it, I'm like, this doesn't seem like a classic thing. This seems like if you told me this album came out yesterday, I'd probably believe you if I
Right.
didn't have a brain in my head. But like Wish You Were Here is one of the greatest albums I think of all time. It's probably my favorite Pink Floyd one of my favorites ever.
Mhm.
And the last one that I saw that I wanted to mention, A Night at the Opera by Queen.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like
Bohemian
in the
Rhapsody.
same year. Then
Yeah.
you have Rhiannon, Landslide, Blue Eyed, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Yeah.
You also have Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Like, forget talking about all the movies and stuff that came out this year. Look at music. We talk about these things because we're in our bubble, but the long overview of all of media and art that exists in the world, we wouldn't have even talked about this. But that's one of the most significant years in music history,
It's a great
probably ever.
Yeah, it's a really good year. And this person has been in the news recently. Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run album came out in
Born to Run.
75.
I can't believe I forgot to. I'm so sorry, Joe. I forgot to mention that one. Born to Run came out that year too.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite novels of all time. Born to Run, you shorten that down to BR.
Hmm.
It's also the shortened form of Battle Royale. The theme song for the book Battle Royale
Uh,
is Born to Run. Um,
yeah.
it's
I
just one of those things where, like, I don't even think about it in those terms anymore. When I think of Born to Run, I think of that book and the movie.
I mean, and all of the albums that you mentioned are very important, very influential, have appeared in so many soundtracks, and yet there's even more. The Bob Dylan album, Blood on the Tracks,
Mhm.
which has the song Tangled Up in Blue and the song Shelter from the Storm. David Bowie's Young Americans album was 75. The Eagles' One of These Nights album. Uh, Elton John album, stupid title, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. But that
That
album,
sounds like an Elton.
I
There
mean,
are two
that
Elton
album
John
has Someone
albums that
Saved My
year.
Life Tonight. Or Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic, gives us Walk This Way and Sweet Emotion. Yeah, an amazing year in music.
What an incredible! Like, I looked at that, I was like, oh, how did I not? I feel almost embarrassed. Like, when I looked at that just before we started this podcast, and I was like my jaw dropped. I was
Yeah.
like, this is the 50th year anniversary of what?
Yeah. Well,
I'll
and
throw some more out,
yeah,
stuff that I like.
yeah.
Hall & Oates, Sarah's Smile, from their Hall & Oates album. Fly By Night by Rush came
Mm,
out this year as well. Um, my favorite band, Yesterday's, only published a live album called, yes, published a live album called Yesterday's.
mhm.
But
Someone did something with the band. I think that might have been the Bowie album, but someone did something with the band in collaboration that year.
Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. The Bob Seger album, Beautiful Loser.
Oh, that's a good one too, yeah.
So yeah, who cares about movies and TV shows from this era? Look at the music. God, like,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, manga was having an off year or whatever. It doesn't matter. Look over here. Look at this other direction. And that's some of the beauty of having all of this art available to you
Yeah,
that you can get from your local library like ours.
that is correct.
Is that if there's an off year, if there's not a whole lot coming out, like, obviously these days there's a glut of things that are available everywhere. But even if nothing's speaking to you in one direction, look in another and you might find some gold there that you might have just missed because you weren't looking over there in that area. Like, that's kind of the reason why we do things as people, as humans, is that, like, us creating art separates us from, like, everything else on the planet. Nothing else creates art, but we as humans do. And I think that's highly important, not just for, like, our culture or whatever, but our identity as living things on this planet. That's the one thing that we contribute to it, I think, that's uniquely ours, is that we make art.
Yeah.
I'll finish up by saying the first song I ever fell in love with, it came out in 1975.
Mm.
Okay? Which one?
Rhinestone Cowboy by Glenn Campbell.
Ah,
Once again, I was 4 or 5 during the
yeah.
1975. So.
The Rhinestone Cowboy album was given to me, I think, that Christmas with the little briefcase record player, you know. Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody was the first song I ever fell in love with.
Uh,
I
well,
think, probably.
from this list, well, and this is one of those things, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast. I know I've mentioned it in conversation with you that I don't know how time works. So I was working on this list going, oh, that was that year. But one of my favorite movies ever was from 75, and Ryan mentioned it. It was Bite the Bullet. I
Oh,
love that
great,
movie. It's
great
Gene
movie.
Western?
Hackman and James Coburn, Jan Michael Vincent, Candice Bergen. Uh,
It's based
Amazing.
off a real horse race that was done, a cross-country horse race.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, and just, yeah, I love that movie. There's some beautiful lines in it that I will quote periodically and stuff. But yeah, I love that. Um,
My favorite line for that, I think, is the madam who says, "You can tell it's a real cowboy. How can you tell? First thing off is the boots. Last thing off is the hat."
yeah. My
Perfect.
my favorite line is the people some people marry.
Yeah.
But it goes with the whole story that makes it important. But yeah. Yeah, no, I love that movie. It's one of my favorites of all time.
So are we going to make this a 2-hour podcast or should we
No,
call
we're
it?
going to wrap up.
We should probably wind down.
Unfortunately, I
It
think we
is
could
our
talk for
anniversary,
longer.
though, so we could keep it going. No.
We could. I mean, it's 50
50
years. It's
hours.
important, right? Like, no, we got stuff to do. I've got some numbers to crunch.
Yeah,
Working in a library, sometimes you have to crunch numbers. It's so odd.
yeah.
I thought I would never have to worry about numbers again.
Are you saying your math teacher was correct and you hate them for it?
Yeah, I do. I hate him for other. Actually, I don't know which of my math teachers said that, but I'm gonna hate him for it anyway.
That's
Well,
fair.
Joe, what do we got going on this month?
We have a few things going on. You can join the Wichita Falls Museum of Art at MSU, Texas for a 3-day summer art camp for ages 6 to 11, where students will dive into fun, hands-on arts activities in a setting designed to spark the imagination. Camp hours are 9 a.m. to 12:30 Monday through Wednesday. That's the 16th through the 18th. Day one is create vibrant animal collages. Day two is make stunning sun catchers. And day three is design unique foam stamp prints. The theater company, Stage 2 Dinner Theater, is performing Sheer Madness, which is an interactive whodunit about a murder committed above a hair salon. Backdoor Theater's doing their evening of improv on June 28th. The next after hours art walk will be downtown Wichita Falls on July 3rd. And then the WFMA will host 2 workshops on perspective drawing on July 8th and July 12th. And of course, for more information about those things and other local activities, you can check out the events section of the MSU Texas homepage and the calendar at discoverwichitafalls.com/events. And of course, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for us, you can send us a message at library@msutexas.edu.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you mention the Riverbend Nature Center's Bug Fest happening in June? I
I
don't
did
remember
not.
that coming up.
I don't have at my fingertips information on that.
Um,
Um, I know that they do things down there on a regular basis. I was going to
so
say, the things that I mentioned, there's way more than that that's
yeah,
happening in the community and even on campus. There are some
I
things, hey guys, this is a secret. Stuff that I don't care about, I won't mention.
I
And
should
that's
I
and
should probably start putting that on our calendar then
yeah.
because like yeah, I just completely forget. But yeah, my um my toddler absolutely loves going to the Riverbend Nature Center. We've had an annual subscription there for like 3 years
Mhm.
or something like that, where you just go up and get it. You don't have to pay for any of their events. Like there's a lot that's covered there. They're currently undergoing a pretty big renovation for their area where they keep a lot of their animals. So some stuff like their bunny they have is inside of the building, and um, just some other areas are getting reworked. But yeah, so this last Saturday they had what's called Bug Fest. They have all these like little activities and like costume contests and stuff. It's all rolled up into the idea of like looking at nature and kind of seeing what kind of different bugs there are and how those bugs are important for our ecosystem.
Mm.
I mean, they have like an entire giant glass jar of like not mealworms, maybe they are, I don't remember, but like they have a thing of hissing cockroaches and stuff. Like
Mhm.
they had one of those giant grasshopper looking things. They were just like letting kids come up and look at and touch. They have like probably in a few months they'll probably have their event focused on reptiles. Like they get their snakes out, they let the kids touch the snakes, and they have their handlers that are always kind of like they're there to make sure that the kids are both safe and they're also learning stuff. They have events called something I don't remember the title of it, but they specifically have like a preschool kind of events
Mhm.
that's made for like toddlers and young children that is absolutely well worth it. The activities and other kinds of little like events that they have for the kids is it's really significant.
Mhm.
So if I forget and I don't mention it next time, I want to make sure that I point out that over there at that Riverbend Nature Center, they do incredible, fantastic work. If you haven't gone by there or if it's been a while, you absolutely should go and check out their events page as well on their website, which I don't have up on me at the moment. But it's very much well worth your time. They're fantastic over there. They're one of the best aspects of this town, I think.
Mm.
Okay, there's my soapbox. Anyone else have anything else to say?
Quick shout out because we skipped over it. Theater, 1975, Chorus Line, The Wiz, and Chicago.
Oh,
Oh, well, there you
amazing.
go. There was a Chicago album that came out in 1975 as well.
Yeah. I'll throw this out there. The This is LGBT Pride Month, and that is happens because of an anniversary of an event from more than 50 years ago, from back in '69. Um, and the only reason I'm mentioning it is just because we're probably going to get told that we shouldn't, and that irritates me. Because as straight seeming white men, we have a voice, and if we don't use our voices to speak out on things that need to be spoken about, then it's a great disservice to the world at large. Um, so um, maybe don't be mad at people for the people that they love. I think that's a good advice. Yeah.
You know what? Here's one way of looking at it. There are things that you should never be ashamed of because of who you are and the way you were born. There are absolutely things you should be ashamed of,
Mhm.
whether by virtue or uh by whatever else. You are not exempt
Yeah.
ever. None of us are. That's part of us being human. Sometimes we can make a lot of really wonderful, fanciful things like art out of the things that make us ashamed. But it's really a lot better to make something like art and appreciate the rest of us that exist in the world than to just use those things you're ashamed of to not contribute anything.
Yeah.
That's all I really want to say about that.
Okay.
You live on this planet too, and whether you like it or not, so do the people that you don't like. Sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. Deal with it, I guess.
Yeah.
And with that, I think that'll do it.
Yeah. I think that's it.
I think podcast is over. We always talk about how we need to stop before we get on our soapboxes. I touched my toe on one of them just now, and I think that it's probably time for us to say thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you, Joe, for keeping our podcast alive.
50 more
50
episodes.
more
Yeah.
episodes.
Woo. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.